Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Security Masterclass, Episode 2, How to Detect and Analyze Cybersecurity Threats. If you're on this event today, hopefully you were able to catch episode 1 in the series. That was on how to establish real data protection. If you missed episode 1 in this 4-part series, you can catch a link to that episode in the handouts tab, where you'll find a link to the recording of that webinar. These are fast-paced, short, very topical, super educational master class events where we're talking with an expert from Rubrik about data protection, cyber threats, data visibility, and driving velocity and intelligence in your data recovery. So this is part 2 of the series. I hope that you'll catch episode 1 and also join us for episodes 3 and 4 in the series. In fact, after the event, you'll be automatically redirected to the landing page for episode 3, where you can register for the next event in the series. Now, before we get started and I introduce you to our expert presenter today, just a few things that you should know about the webinar. My name is David Davis of Actual Tech Media, and I'll be serving as the moderator. We want these to be educational. We'll be doing a Q&A session with our expert presenter, and we encourage your questions there in the questions panel of your audience console. I see many of you have already found that with your hello and good morning messages. Of course, we appreciate those, but we also want your technical questions, and I'm sure there's a lot of questions to be asked around detection and analysis of cyber threats. This is a hot topic these days. It's in the news. It's still in the news as of this morning, with major companies being impacted with these types of cyber threats and ransomware. So we encourage your questions again, and we have a best question prize, which I'll talk about here in just a moment. I also want to call your attention to the handouts tab there. Besides the link to the masterclass episode 1, you'll also find a link to the upcoming virtual session where you'll get an introduction to Rubrik if you want to register for that. There is a link to the Tech Field Day session on a Rubrik Polaris architecture and vision. And then finally, a white paper on defense in depth with Polaris radar. So we encourage you to check out those resources. We'll also be announcing the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card door prize at the end of the webinar today. If you're watching this on demand, of course, the drawing has already occurred. The prize terms can be found in the handouts tab. And then, as I mentioned, we have a best question prize as well for another $50 Amazon gift card, just to help shake loose some questions that might be on your mind here on the live event. We'll select the best question afterwards, and winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize policy. And with that, I'm excited now to bring in our expert presenter, Mr. Jeff Inouye, Technical Marketing Architect at Rubrik. Jeff presented on episode 1 of the series. Great presentation, great demo, and I know that today will be more of the same, a more excellent presentation and demo on today's topic of detecting and analyzing cyber threats. So without further delay, Jeff, take it away.
David. Hey everyone, and welcome to our second segment in our masterclass series, where we're going to cover topics on data protection, data security, as well as extracting additional value from your backups. My name is Jeff Inouye, and I'm a technical marketing architect here at Rubrik, and I'll be your guide through this presentation as we examine the landscape of ransomware threats and how Rubrik aids customers in protecting their digital assets. In part 1 of the series, we stripped down the topic of data protection to understand the fundamental purpose of backup security. If you recall, it was confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your backup data, and how using a zero-trust architecture plays a key role to ensuring successful recoveries. If you didn't catch it, we'll post a link at the end of the presentation. And for today's presentation, I'm here to discuss how backups can serve as a source of truth against data attacks. We will walk through the anatomy of a ransomware event and point out where data intelligence through metadata can be extremely useful in recoveries. I'll introduce you to Rubrik Polaris and our anomaly detection engine, Polaris Radar. And as usual, we'll dive into the interface for a demo of Polaris Radar and leverage a workflow to restore data with recovery intelligence. Ransomware attacks have followed a similar pattern of infecting systems. it all starts with the distribution campaign, where attackers use social engineering and weaponized websites to download a dropper, which kicks off the infection. The dropper then downloads the executable code, which installs the malicious software. As ransomware sets up, it embeds and establishes a persistence beyond a reboot. It then begins scanning for high-value content on both the local and network resources. This target data is then potentially exfiltrated and then encrypted locally to cripple system operations. If backups are unable to recover the environment, the attacker collects the ransom. There's been rapid development throughout this lifecycle, but what's really interesting is the intelligent techniques used during the initial phases of infection, staging, and scanning. So for example, during the infection and staging phases, attackers may employ techniques to evade detection. They can run completely in memory, masquerading as a known process within a system. They can sleep a process and stay dormant. And they can also use existing code bases like PowerShell. All these techniques can be used to build an attack network inside your perimeter and avoid detection through endpoint solutions. During the scan phase, attackers have become very patient to gather intel and move laterally across the network in hopes to gain access to higher value targets. These are things like centralized storage, authentication services, backups, and other Tier 0 systems. Backups serve a primary role in the effective recovery of data if those systems become compromised, but they are also in a unique position to provide insights through metadata analysis. If you take a step back and analyze the typical data environment, you'll typically see the four following buckets: production, or real-time data to applications and services; dev, test, and QA, for innovation and quality; analytics, to provide actionable insights from data; and backups, the last line of defense against human or machine error and malicious intent. Other than backups, the other three data services provide continual business value to the organization. So you have to ask yourself as a sysadmin, why wouldn't we capitalize on this data and the metadata at rest? One common scenario is that backup files are often archaic and lack intelligent descriptors to efficiently analyze or make use of. So enter the scene metadata, or data about data, which has been a godsend for the sysadmin. An operational example is the ability to easily work with large sets of data and objects by allowing tagging capabilities, so we can categorize, inventory, and govern our infrastructure systems. At a granular file level, metadata provides the same leverage to end users by providing expedited search results and rich content indexing. In the world of Rubrik backups, we capture metadata in the form of file name, type, access, and other useful content to fuel the feedback loop for behavior analysis. As backup metadata is pooled as a data resource, it creates a foundation for actionable insights without hindering production services. Techniques such as machine learning models and algorithms can be applied to this data resource to analyze randomness or data entropy, which is a characteristic of a ransomware event. Now that you understand the potential for backups to be used as a source of data intelligence through metadata, let's take a look at the foundational aspects of Rubrik Polaris and Polaris Radar. Then we'll dig in on how we extend our architecture for the hybrid cloud environment. When Rubrik Polaris was introduced 3 years ago, there were 3 customer goals in mind. Number 1, unify the customer view of data protection and data policies. Number 2, treat data as a first-class entity and unlock additional value to the customer. Number 3, provide a platform for protecting data wherever it resides, either on-prem or in the cloud. From this, the engineers at Rubrik built a SaaS solution that provides a scalable and secure data management platform for hybrid cloud infrastructure. As a sysadmin, what if you could log into a single interface to control your data protection? Rubrik Polaris gives you the control over governance and visibility of your data management activities that is packaged in a SaaS solution. This works in conjunction with our cloud data management software, or CDM, as well as our infrastructure, platform, and software as a service backup solutions. For example, you can enforce global protection policies, role-based access control, and logging and audit capabilities throughout all of your protected assets. In addition, Polaris provides the aggregation of backup metadata that is collected in line with your data protection scheme. This metadata resource is where we can extract additional value through machine learning modules such as Polaris Radar. With Radar, backup metadata is leveraged to identify anomalous behavior. In the case of ransomware, malicious activity, or operational mishaps, Radar can identify the blast radius of that event. Unlike other methods, data transformations from these events cannot be masqueraded or hidden from detection. Or in other words, these events cannot hide from the intel gathered from the data. Once Radar detects an anomalous event, it notifies the sysadmins and provides granular recovery options so that only required data is recovered versus an entire rollback of the environment. Before we jump into the demo, I want to provide a little bit of history about the machine learning algorithms that have evolved within the product. When initially released, the KNN algorithm was used because there was limited real-world data to be leveraged. But as more of this data was amassed, additional models such as random forest and neural net have been integrated to provide further accuracy. Given this is a modern SaaS product, these enhancements were delivered seamlessly to our customers, without the need for their intervention or operational lift to support additional infrastructure. Now let's dive into the demo and take a look at the detection and remediation workflows from the Radar interface. And as a bonus, I'm going to give you a sneak peek at one of our latest features called App Flows. An IT organization faces a critical set of challenges when ransomware strikes. It's an all-hands effort to identify compromised accounts, systems, and data. Let's say that you have been hit by ransomware, and the only information that you have is that application and file services are affected. In this demo, we will identify the impacted data through Polaris Radar and perform an in-place recovery with Polaris App Flows. From the Radar dashboard, let's navigate to the Anomalies page. App Flows uses a construct of a blueprint, which is a collection of virtual machines, and resource mappings that directs the system how to recover. It can be configured to orchestrate a successful application recovery, being mindful of the dependencies required. As you inspect the dashboard, it is clear that there is suspicious behavior in two of our applications. When you expand the blueprints, you can take a closer look at the details and identify which systems and data have been compromised. The multi-select capabilities allow you to initiate complex recoveries driven by a simple interface. When you click Recover, you can initiate the start of a recovery workflow. From here, you can view, edit, and drill down into individual objects in each blueprint. The analytics driven by Radar arm you with key information to assist you in recovery. The green shield indicates the last point in time where 0 anomalies were flagged, and a prime candidate for recovery. As we save the configuration, we also direct the system to pause if it is interrupted during the recovery process. At the confirmation page, we type in the word blueprint and click Recover to initiate the workflow. To view the progress of the recovery task, we simply click the Go to Recoveries button to monitor the progress. With Rubrik Polaris, you gain the integration of data insight and orchestrated DR so you can quickly and efficiently assess an attack and recover. Thank you for joining the webinar today. Please join us next week as we explore Polaris Sonar, which provides powerful data classification through the Polaris platform. Back to you, David.
All right, excellent presentation, Jeff. Thank you so much for sharing that demo there as well. I really love seeing the Rubrik solution in action. The user interface is just so beautiful, and the usability as well. Just it looks so easy to use to recover from these types of dangerous attacks. Jeff, you ready for some Q&A?
Absolutely.
All right, excellent. I want to remind everyone about our best question prize as well. So if you have a question on your mind, now's the time to get it in. Also, I brought up a slide there on the screen where you can register and save your seat for the next live demo of the Rubrik solution, Introduction to Rubrik, Getting to Know CDM. And that is a clickable link there on the screen if you want to check that out. So let's see. First question I see here that came in is from Paul, and he's asking, with ransomware attacks getting more and more complex, can Rubrik really help to recover from these, more complex type of attacks?
Yeah, I mean that's an interesting question. I think it's the one that says the multi-factor or multi-vector triple extortion type of threat, which is it's very interesting that it's not just the encryption and the uh, availability of systems that we're preventing. It's also the exfiltration and smear campaigns that happen. Um, so Rubrik is not the end all solution to that. Again, it's just a piece to the layered approach that every organization is looking to take, right? So between perimeter and endpoint, our focus is directly on backups, and then providing additional optics essentially to that data set. Because as we mentioned in the presentation, this is something that they can't really interact with directly, and that data is going to have an emerging of information that you wouldn't otherwise see. So to answer the question, it's not necessarily specific to for all of those things. Our focus is to be the last line of defense, but also get that additional value.
Excellent. Got it. Okay. Let's see. Next question they're asking when it comes to protecting the data, how is it stored in multiple locations and how often can can the backup data be updated?
Yeah, so in terms of replication or archive, that can be done as soon as the backup is taken. Um, so we have within our SLA domain policy engine, if a backup is taken, we can immediately do an archival or a replication or both after that's completed. So it's going to be right away. I think the um, other question in there is that what's our tightest RPO that we can provide. So we can get down to down to the second if we're talking about something like CDP or continuous data protection for VMware virtual machine backups, or something like 5-minute log transaction log backups within a SQL database. So to answer the question more directly, it does vary based upon what type of data we're protecting.
Excellent. Okay. And then, kind of to follow up on that, you talked about replication, getting data offsite. What are the options there? I assume you could go to another on-premises company location that had Rubrik, but then you could also replicate up into a public clouds. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so there's two different distinctions there. One is replication, the other is archiving. So the use case around archiving is that long-term storage. However, we can archive immediately, if we choose to do so. When you're looking for something that is disaster recovery specific to the case of a site failure, like by flood or electrical outage, um, that would be a use case for replication, which would be another Rubrik cluster. And another way to think about this is that Rubrik cluster doesn't necessarily have to be an on-prem appliance or device. That software can also be deployed on something like infrastructure as a service.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Next question from Patricia, who's asking, how soon does Rubrik get updated when there are new attacks to recognize attacks?
hmm Yeah, I mean, so and that's a good question because it means to me that, or says to me that people are thinking about this. So when we get a backup snapshot, metadata is essentially sent to Polaris for inspection. So we're basically bound to that constraint. Um, so again, it's not a real time detection. That's more for your endpoint solutions or stuff that's on the wire. This is again like another layer to that approach, right? To secure your data itself. So between backups is basically the time in which we're able to inspect a snapshot, find the differences or anomalies.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that one. This one from Mike, he's asking, what type of reporting capabilities are available, and can you create custom reports or metrics, for example, to deliver to a leadership team?
Yeah, and that can all be driven through Polaris, and that's a really good use case for a demo that I'll do on the next round. Because reporting and auditability is really kind of the pain of being a sysadmin, especially when you're talking about things like backups. You have to You have to gather all that data a lot of times from different sources, and then use your own methods in order to make it something that's presentable. Polaris does that for you because since we're API driven, we have connections to our clusters and customer accounts. They can essentially log into their service and they can view all of that aggregated data in a nice clean dashboard.
Nice. And then here's a follow-up question from Chris actually. Can you automate those reports and, deliver those to the leadership team in an automated way?
Yeah, they're totally schedulable. The other really nice thing out there for again the sysadmins is we can do something that's pretty or something that is more CSV based, which is what I always preferred.
Nice. Let's see. Next question. John says that ransomware attacks can reside on a company's network for months, gathering data prior to releasing the encrypted payload. Can Rubrik help in this situation?
And I've been in similar scenarios in operations, and really what Rubrik can provide in those types of scenarios is the ability to instantiate, say an application or a workload um, from a backup very quickly, right? And the use case around that is that security ops can then come into an isolated environment and inspect that data before it's released, right? So you're not necessarily going to know that point in time in which um, I guess the breach occurred, but it is going to be the best effort from our part because it's going to be a multifaceted approach to be able to discover that.
Okay. Okay. And then there's a question here from Ravi about data corruption. I'm thinking about, can the backup data be encrypted by ransomware? Is there some way to prevent that?
Yeah, and that's into our foundations of our storage platform. Essentially, we have our homegrown file system that we have built from the ground up to basically adhere to an append-only strategy. And so, really, what the file system lets us do is control the capability of any service or end user, for example, to be able to modify a file. So that attribute is essentially stripped away from our file system. Um, so that's why we can gain that immutability. On the other side of the integrity, we actually have CRCs and essentially automated system checks that go through and do scrubbing to make sure that the data has maintained its integrity and nothing has been uh, corrupted in any way.
That's critical. So excellent to have that capability in there. Um, Another question they're asking: can Rubrik protect our data across hybrid locations, for example, multi-cloud and multiple data centers?
Yes. So the typical topology, and I should make a slide for this one of these days, is that most people will, or most enterprises will deploy on-prem clusters local to the site, just for recoverability aspects as well as ingest. You could do that over the wire if you would like to, but that kind of goes against our architecture in general. Because of Polaris, we're now able to have a central control plane, right? So you kind of think of these as more like um, local backup repositories that we can then control through Polaris.
Got it. Okay. Bradford is asking if Rubrik requires an agent to protect these endpoints or servers that it's protecting, and can it be agentless or use an agent, or how does that work?
Yeah, so anything that's application based, so something like Oracle databases or SQL databases, those are going to require an agent because we have to interact with the operating system and the application to perform quiescence, right, or a pause of the application. With virtual machines, we can essentially do that agentless. That's very commonplace in the industry, but we also do that. So I would say the breakout is probably around 80/20 in terms of agents, or excuse me, versus non-agent deployments versus agent deployments.
Okay. Good deal. Let's see. Matt is asking, what makes the Rubrik immutable backup unique in the marketplace here, and how's it different from the competition?
Yeah, that's a good question. Really, it's the idea of the intent of when it was built versus uh, trying to create a system that's either added onto infrastructure that's brought to the backup vendor or software that you're applying. They're multi-purpose file systems, right? They're meant for multiple applications, which is great, right? We've we've grown up and done great things with those. But when we talk about something that's more specific, there's certain attributes like immutability or recoverability that we want to make sure that we have baked into the underlying file system. So really, it comes down to the intent of, when the development occurred, what was the objective, and ours was specific for the application, which was backup.
Excellent. Okay. Let's see. I think we're starting to run out of time here. I know we wanted to kind of keep this masterclass series relatively short. Unless there's any other questions that you wanted to respond to here live, we can get back to the remaining questions electronically. Anything else that you want to respond to there, Jeff?
No, I think these have been really good questions. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, everyone out there in the audience, for the excellent questions. We do appreciate those. And thank you to Rubrik, of course, for supporting today's event. Don't forget about the link that's right there on your screen, that you can click on that link that will take you to an introduction to Rubrik, where you can register and learn about the Rubrik CDM. It's a virtual session that's coming up. Looks like next week. So hope that you'll check that out if you'd like to learn more. There's also a link to it there in the handouts tab, as well as a link to the first session in our masterclass series. Also links to the Tech Field Day Rubrik Polaris Architecture and Vision, and a paper on defense in depth with Polaris Radar. So make sure that you check out those resources. And then, of course, also, we hope that you will join us on our next episode here in the 4-part Rubrik Masterclass series. The next episode will be on how to provide data protection and data visibility. It's going to be a great session. After this event, you'll be automatically redirected to the landing page for this upcoming episode 3. So we hope that you will join us there as well. And then before we go, I want to announce the winner of our Amazon $300 gift card. This is going to Craig Beck from Washington. Congratulations. We'll also reach out to our best question prize winner as well. I hope that you learned a lot on today's session. I know I did. Check out rubrik.com for more information, and have a great day. See you next time.